You ready, Ashley?
Yes, Janine is hosting. Janine is clerking and we are live on YouTube now.
Okay. We're waiting for a clerk?
We only are waiting for Ms. Conwell, I believe, but you have a quorum.
She's actually with her mom, okay, and she may or may not make it. So what do we have? We have 3?
You have 4.
4?
Mm-hmm. So you have a quorum whenever you're ready.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. Well, let's get going. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, this November 17th, Cuyahoga County Justice Affairs Committee meeting. Call the roll.
Calling the roll, Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Ms. Baker. I see Ms. Baker. Okay. Mr. Tuma.
Here.
Mr. Brady.
Here.
Ms. Conwell. Ms. Conwell is absent at the moment. There is a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Councilman Miller is in attendance.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Miller. Public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one submitted any public comment.
Thank you. In your packet, there's the minutes of the September 22nd meeting. If they're in order, I'll accept the motion in a second.
Motion to adopt. Second. Second.
You have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Against? Thank you. 2020-0247.
Resolution number 2020-0247, authorizing an amendment to requisition number 39706 for various providers for real estate appraisal services in connection with the sheriff's sale.
And who do we have? We have anybody from the sheriff's office?
Chair, I think we have both Sheriff Schilling as well as other folks who I believe are on. I'm not sure if they're muted or not.
They're muted.
I know that Donna requested the link and it was sent to her. She usually speaks on.
Yeah, I see them. They're muted. Sheriff, could you unmute? You're muted.
I'm going to text them.
Hey, Mike, yeah, I'll try to call the sheriff as well.
Okay.
This is Lauren from the Sheriff's Department. If you're from the Sheriff's Department, just push *6 on the phone to unmute yourself. Because I see they're here. They just don't know how to unmute their stuff.
Can you hear us now?
Okay.
Yeah.
Resolution 2020-0247.
Hello, this is Donna Cleo with the Sheriff's Department. This is for an amendment to the previous appraiser contract. These are for appraisers that appraise for our civil division for the sheriff's foreclosure sales. And that this is for a 5-year amendment for 25 separate appraisers.
Okay. Is it usual that we do 5 years?
This is rather new. Previous to, we never really even had these appraiser contracts previous to 2010. And so we started doing them in 2010. And the last one we did was 3-year, and nothing really changes with this. So we just thought we would do a 5-year on this one. If that is unacceptable, we can always back this down to 3 years.
I know historically we're a little leery of anything more than 3 on anything. What does the committee have to say?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
So I just for Donna, what's the method behind the madness with a 5-year as opposed to a 2 or 3-year contract?
Again, it was just, I wouldn't even say there's a method. It was just that this is, since there's 25 separate appraisers, it's such a long process. We were just going to try to put it into place for a longer period of time. Again, because it's coordinating with 25 different people, trying to get everything signed and trying to get, excuse me, all the documents uploaded, things like that. There was over 200 documents to upload with this particular item. So again, it was just to try and do it for a longer period of time, just again to so it's not something we would have to address then in the near future.
Anyone else have input?
I'll have maybe just a question or comment, if I may. Chair, Nan Baker.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
This contract is already expired. It ended at 8/31/20, so we are amending a contract that's already ended. I know we did it before, but I just thought I would bring it to the committee's attention that we're amending something that's already passed in time.
That is true. It did expire, and that was, we started this actually back in May. I'm sorry, I have a bad horse right there. We started this back in May, and but it took this long to do it. That is because of all the COVID restrictions. We had a very hard time getting people to get things signed and doing everything through the mail and through via email. And then because of COVID, we had to change what was called Rule 27. The courts had to change it, which went from in-person sales to online sales. And we really couldn't move forward on this until all the judges approved this Rule 27 and signed off on it. And that took quite a long time. So, and we did not want any conflicting language between Rule 27 and this contract. So again, because of this COVID, everything just took so much longer. But we did begin this process back in May.
And from other contracts that I've questioned, when we try to extend something that's already ended, our law director says there's really no issue as long as all parties are in agreement. But it doesn't look good, but I certainly understand the circumstances and why we're over 2 months late on this contract.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I'll follow your lead on this. I think that 5 years is too long. I could live with anything less than that, but I think 5 years is, like you say, it's not our tradition to have contracts be that far out.
Donna, would there be any objection to going to 3 years and to stay consistent with what we've been doing?
No objection on our part. I'll just have to speak to the law department because of course we had 25 appraisers sign 25 amendments. So we will probably, and I'm sure there won't be any objection, of course, on their part. So I'll just speak to the law department on how we can change that language from 5 years to 3 years within these amendments and then just move forward on everything else as is.
Okay, if no one else has a comment, I'll make a motion to amend 2020-0247 from the 5 years to the 3 years, which would be 8/31, ending 8/31/2023. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
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 And before us is the amended legislation. Is there any further discussion? I would assume we're going to move forward with this because of the timing. So I'll move.
So would
Go
this be
ahead.
under a suspension of rules, Councilman Gallagher?
Yeah, yes, because of the dates and timing.
Thank you so much.
Right. So I'll make a motion of 2020, Resolution 2020-0247 as amended to the full council under second reading suspension. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Against? Thank you very much.
Thank you, council members.
Thank you. At the last, at my meeting at the Justice Center Committee regarding the Justice Center and the jail in the future in which we're going to be going with those two facilities, the issue was raised regarding the diversion center and where exactly we were at. I thought the explanation given to that committee was reasonable, and I just thought it important that we be updated by the administration and to allay any concerns of those that are looking for this diversion center to move forward, which it is. And if the administration could help us out where we're at, what we're doing, and what your timelines, if you have any are, please. Do we have Mr. Mason or Mr. Curry or
Brandy Carney can speak to this.
Randy Carney? Are you there?
I am.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute. How are you, Councilman Gallagher?
Okay, good to see
Great.
you. Okay, we talked about this. Could you take us through where we're at?
Yes, sir. So again, thank you, Brandy Carney, Chief of Special Operations for Cuyahoga County. So very exciting, the work on the Diversion Center project. As many of you know, this is something that has been talked about and explored for a number of years in Cuyahoga County. But I can absolutely say that particularly over the last year, 8 months to year, significant work is being done on this project. Often daily myself, it's the main project that I'm leading, Chief of Staff Mason, very involved almost daily working on this project to make sure that it's done right, it's done successfully. This is something that will be a long-standing structure in our community that has such an impact in so many ways. So we're really looking forward to it. Just so everybody's aware if I could briefly describe, the concept of diversion. So diverting individuals throughout the criminal justice process, there's a number of opportunities that individuals can be diverted. Particularly what we're focusing on initially for this project would be individuals being diverted pre-arrest. So what that means is an officer would respond to a scene, identify that an individual has a substance abuse and or mental health emergency or need. That's one of the issues that they're dealing with. And rather than what might happen now for what could be a nonviolent crime, a misdemeanor or a low-level felony, that individual will likely be taken to jail and charged. And I think we all know that while our jail and our medical metro within the jail does a phenomenal job within the jail, that isn't the best place to treat an underlying issue, really so that individual can be successful in the community. You treat that individual, then there's so many benefits, reduced recidivism. You probably don't even know all the benefits that ultimately occur. So again, our intention is to divert the individual pre-arrest rather than being taken to our jail, would be taken to a structure, a new diversion center that we would have for all of Cuyahoga County. For some background on the project, in May of this year, I released an initial RFP for this project. There's really 4 components that are part of the Diversion Center project. So the first is the actual operation of the center itself, as well as the location of the center, the first 2. And the other 2 components are pieces that are essential in making sure it's a smooth process. So first, as I mentioned, law enforcement is really key to this project. We want to make sure that they have the tools that they need for this project. So part of that, there's training that's called crisis intervention training or CIT training. That training can help the officer identify someone with a mental health issue or a substance abuse issue and provides them with some tools that they can use both for communicating and identification. So part of the RFP we released was to ensure that all of Cuyahoga County law enforcement officers can ultimately be trained in CIT. Obviously, that's going to take some time and there's some continuing ed involved, but that's a really important component of this project. Lastly would be a 24/7 call-in center. That call-in center will be staffed by credentialed individuals that, as I mentioned, understand behavioral health, understand identifying, as I mentioned, someone that has a substance abuse or a mental health need and communicating with that individual. So the officer can call that line and kind of get support in making the decision on, the individual that they're dealing with on scene. And they can also understand if that individual is appropriate for the diversion center. They're also going to have to make sure, as I mentioned, that that individual doesn't have, if it's a violent crime or if there's a significant or a violent past, and obviously they're not going to be a candidate for a diversion center. So the officer would call the 24/7 hotline, identify, and again, rather than taking them to jail, they would take that individual to our diversion center. The RFP that was released in May of this year with those 4 components closed approximately the 3rd week of June. We did receive 3 responses to that RFP. We were actively negotiating with one of those, a group that responded collectively, and unfortunately, mid-July, maybe a little later, they reached back out to the county and apologized and said that what they had included within their RFP response, they were not in a position any longer to commit to. And so what we really had to do is, unfortunately, that threw out their entire proposal. So after that, we had to reissue the RFP. That was done. Excuse me, I just want to make sure my dates are right. The second RFP was issued on September 1st of this year and closed on September 16th. Just as in the first one, I didn't mention, and as in the second one, we had a collective group that got together to evaluate the proposals. Individuals including the common pleas judges, representative from 2 of the specialty dockets, our county clerk, health and human services leadership representatives, public works, public safety, or the sheriff's office. We really wanted to make sure that a lot of individuals throughout the county and leaders that really have some component within this diversion center process are actively at the table. And so we're making this decision together. So we did make a recommendation to move forward negotiating with one of the proposals happened at that time. Where we are right now is we are actively negotiating. This is interesting timing to meet with you, councilmen. I expect to have our contract completed, hopefully by the end of this week. Now I say that meaning, doesn't mean the other individual who will have it signed, but that's how close we are to moving in front of council soon for a contract for services for the diversion center. I would add that there's a second phase 2 part of this diversion center. So the center itself has 50 beds that deal with the individual for acute needs. So if it's a substance abuse issue, they are going to provide detoxification services that might occur 5 to 7 days. If it's a mental health, there's some stabilization that has to occur. They might have to get back on their meds, for example. So at the diversion center itself, those 50 beds, people will stay 5 to 7 days. They may stay up to 9 days. Following that, obviously, there's still, depending on the individual, but very likely a significant amount of time that's part of their treatment. Could be anywhere from 30 days following up to 120 or more. So what I've done is completed a second RFP for that second phase. That is going through our internal Infor process now, and so should be released sometime soon, within the next month or 2. What that will do is ask, for example, local sober living facilities or treatment facilities for open beds that they have, that we would coordinate care coordination for the individual. So when someone is ready to leave the diversion center, that we would coordinate their stay, which would be the next step to finish out their treatment option at that center. And so that's a second RFP that will be released soon, but is still part of this diversion center continuum.
Okay, thank you. The ultimate goal here is to find out how many people this would move away from the jail proper. And while our experts are working on this also, that are helping us in the build or redo of the Just Center and jail, we don't know exactly that number. This is not rocket science. This is being done all over the United States. So we have many things to look at as far as how this may, and we're pretty safe in saying it will knock down the population of the jail proper. But this will help us getting it up sooner than later, give us a hard number, and it will ultimately, most likely, dictate what the final numbers on the new jail will be. So hopefully we can get this moving, Brandy and the administration, and you keep us up to date. We'll be bringing you back as this moves forward. We'll look forward to those contracts. And, you know, this is hat in hand with the new jail, and it's an exciting prospect to finally get into modern times with incarceration here in Cuyahoga County. Finally, probably 20 years late, but we're not going to look at that.
I think
Is
it's
there
very.
any other questions for Brandy Kearney?
Can I quickly, Councilman, I wanted to add, as you mentioned, we have a consultant that's been working with us on this project. They also are one of the sub-consultants for the Justice Center project. They're named Pulitzer and Group. Really phenomenal, have been a great asset. They actually previously worked on another very successful diversion center in Bexar County, Texas. They were part of that planning process. And so I've made sure to these other successful centers that are very successful, one in Houston, as I mentioned, one in San Antonio. Because of COVID, we weren't able to go to visit. We had hoped a number of us would be able, but we've done some virtual tours. Everyone from, you know, the prosecutor and his office, the public defender, judges, local community behavioral health hospitals. Everyone was asked if they want to participate and to see, and some lessons learned from these other successful centers. So, you know, so that we do learn from them and do it correctly here. So we are making sure to cross all our I's and, cross all the T's and dot the I's as much as we can.
Questions for Brandy Kearney?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, to Ms. Carney, thank you very much for that presentation, and I appreciate the progress being made. There have been some concerns expressed in the community about possible use of the old Juvenile Justice Center as the site for the diversion center. My question is whether you can confirm that that's the primary site being considered, and also whether you can tell us whether there are also other sites being considered that would be workable.
Sure, thank you, Councilman. So I can tell you that we are looking at the juvenile justice facility for a long-term facility. I would say I wasn't part of this initial project when it started maybe 3 years ago, but that was that site was looked at in depth at that time. There were some design documents that were actually completed for that site that we have. I know that there's been some concern raised in the community about that site. We're aware of those and have been and tried to really understand those concerns myself and Chief of Staff Mason and others, because, from my perspective, there's some real benefits of that site. It's very large. There's opportunities for expansion. And what I've seen in so many of these successful centers is they start off as we have with the 50-bed diversion facility, but there are so many other components that ultimately part of the diverting process, or opportunities for other opportunities within that site to deal with other populations, or to grow if your center were to grow over time and add additional beds. So we really have some flexibility on that site because we own it. I would say as a location, it's primary, it's close to all the highways. It's right downtown. There's some real benefits for that center or for that site. It is not confirmed, to answer your question. It is not confirmed at this time. We are actively looking at it as a site. I would add that that particular site would be a significant cost to upgrade. One caveat is part of it as the county, because we own that site, regardless, we have to do some upgrades to the site, such as I think asbestos abatement and others that would have to be done regardless because we do own it. But that site is being looked at as a long-term option. However, we're excited that we're looking to have an interim solution. You know, a site like that could take, you know, 1.5 to 2 years to completely finish the construction on. And so what will likely go in front of you very soon would be a temporary solution where we're using a site, again, temporary, maybe the first 1.5 years. You know, ultimately, you know, it could be very successful, but that way we don't have to wait until the long term and we can get this up and running much sooner.
And Mr. Chairman, Ms. Carney, as far as what you're looking for a long-term site, is the Juvenile Justice Center site the only site currently being looked at, or are there other sites that have been identified and are being considered as possible locations for the long-term site?
Yes, sir. Thank you for reiterating that question because I meant to answer it. I would say, you know, myself and again, the Chief of Staff for months over the summer really continuously looked at and identified sites. You know, it's not easy. As I said, there needs to be space, there needs to be access, it needs to be in a good location. You know, it's imperative that law enforcement throughout the entire county use a site like this. And so it needs to be something central to all of them, easily accessible. The zoning requirements are very, you know, unique in it. So we did look at a number of sites. We also looked at other diversion programs. We went down to Akron. But again, looked at many sites, but at this point in time, that's the one that we really kept going back to. And as I said, there are concerns in the community, but there really are a lot of benefits for that site.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward to continued progress in bringing this to a completion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for Ms. Carney?
I have one question, if you don't mind, Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
So I think you said earlier, Director, or Chief, that the negotiations for the contract will be completed this week. How can we complete a contract if we don't have a place secured to move forward?
So to be clear, again, the negotiations and a final draft contract, I'm hoping that we have this week. Within that would be the temporary site that I spoke of. So we do have the temporary interim site that we're able to use. It's zoned appropriately and to use that site. It's the longer term, the 2-year, the larger site that the juvenile justice facility, we're still working through some of those options.
I'm sorry, where is the temporary interim site at?
I don't know. I don't know if that's an issue because we're in the process of negotiating. I'm not sure if that's an issue if I relay or not. I apologize. Is the law department on?
Okay.
Yeah,
It may not be, but do you mind?
I wouldn't go. That's not, we don't need to
That's
know.
fine. I didn't know it was, all right. But the temporary, it seems odd that we wouldn't have even the temporary site in place before we negotiate a contract.
The temporary site, just to be clear, will be part of the contract that I'm speaking of. So it includes the temporary site, the operation of the center, the call-in line, and the law enforcement training.
Okay, so that's
Yeah,
all. So
part
it
of
all
that.
goes or none of it goes.
That's correct.
Okay. And if I may, the 50 beds that you're speaking of, that doesn't seem to be a lot of beds. I mean, we're talking about a population of 1,200, 1,800, even over 2,000. And I believe in the other conversations that we've had, mental health and drug abuse was a big part of that population. And 50 beds that stay 5 to 7 or even up to 9 days doesn't seem like it's a very big impact for what we thought was the amount of population in that jail that had those issues. Well, how did you come up with 50 beds?
Sure. So with the support of Pulitzer Group that I had mentioned before, I know that 50 beds, it does not seem like a lot, but they really reviewed the data last year and looked at, as you mentioned, I think they looked over a 6-month period, and more than 700 of 2,100 people in our jail had serious mental health and substance abuse issues. Could be much higher than that. But looking at that data, but remember that people with a felonious and any type of felonious charge, there's limitations on who can go to the center. The type of crime that they committed, the number of crime, whether it's violent or not. And so really that takes that number down. So we really looked at the numbers and looked at from the data that we had, who would be potential eligible candidates. There is opportunities, this has an opportunity to divert, let's say 40 people, if it's 50 beds, maybe 40 people a day. That's something that will definitely add up. But while it would be great, they're just not all candidates for a center like this. It's, another tool in the toolbox, so to speak, a great one, hopefully with, lifelong benefits for the individual. But that was the reason we came to the number for 50 beds. But knowing that over time we could increase the bed capacity, maybe, over time we do open up for more individuals after people become used to this concept, more individuals who they might say no to now that they might in the future. So there's growth in the future, but that was the reason for the 50 beds now, the data that we had.
I see. So if I just may wrap up, so those that you have found that are felony offenses that have mental health or drug addiction issues that don't qualify now for the diversion center, they still have mental health and drug addiction issues that could have gotten to the point of where they're at. And so what are you doing with those, or is that just another day of what you're doing with those that have drug abuse and mental health that rise above the misdemeanors that we can divert to the diversion center?
Sure. Well, first I would add that we're very lucky that Prosecutor O'Malley is, open to the idea of exploring low-level nonviolent felonies for the center, which is really great. To speak directly to your question, as I mentioned, this is only one step in the diversion process, this pre-arrest. So many of those individuals you're speaking of, we have drug courts, we have mental health court. Once they go through our criminal justice process, there's different opportunities for them to receive some of these services when they leave, some continuum of care services. And so we have some of those things in place throughout the process. This is just as early on, rather than getting even people in the jail initially, we wanted to, divert them as well as treating that underlying issue. But, the diversion center, maybe once it's open and we're moving forward and successful and things are running smooth, we do open it up to other parts of the criminal justice process. And once they've already been there for some time, but right now the judges have some of that flexibility, or their caseworkers, but not within the diversion center.
Okay, and of course, those that go to the diversion center are not arrested at all. That they don't get the help they need and then go to jail. They're at the diversion center, they're given what they need, and then they're released.
That's correct. This is an opportunity for them, to hopefully, get the services they need and not step foot within the county jail. I would just add that, what the central booking project that's going on within the jail right now, I know Bob Corey is speaking too often, which is also really exciting. That's the next step in this process. So we can divert individuals pre-arrest. They never step in the jail, as you spoke to. They might an officer might instead end up taking them down, start to book them. They might get booked, they might get charged, but they still might not ever go up in jail. Maybe they would get diverted to the diversion center or somewhere else. But again, another opportunity for them. But the people or the clients we're focusing on, or I am for this, are not even arrested, don't even go downtown to the jail.
Okay, and those that are repeat offenders, they've been through your diversion center and then 6 months later, they're again finding themselves back with an addiction or the mental health services they continue to need. Do they go back to the process again of being taken to the diversion center and helped again?
So this is, this is an opportunity, a voluntary opportunity for individuals. It's not a constant revolving door. I would say that, that those discussions we've talked about, only one time, and unfortunately that's it. But, there's a lot of the right people at the table, the public defender, the prosecutor's office, Cleveland and county judges, our leadership here in public safety. So those decisions on what is the best criteria, are something that, myself, but a lot of those others really have to make over time. And as they get comfortable with this program, some centers I'm aware of that I've been researching or I've spoken to say, you get up to 3 opportunities or chances, and they have criteria on the type. Some say 1 and you're done. So really that's a collective group that'll make that decision. But as of right now, it's, 1 opportunity. And unfortunately, next time you'll have to go to jail and be charged.
All right, I appreciate the update. Thank you, Chair.
And to add to that, the jail proper will have a psych unit and a hospital unit. So this is ancillary. This is something probably should have been done many years ago again, but at least we're now moving to a point where we can see where we're at. And the word temporary is important because as we move forward with the building of the jail, we'll have to see where this takes us. So we're not there right now, but we want to get it up and running. Are there any other questions for Mrs. Carney? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Be good. Appreciate it. Okay, we received the sheriff's incident report regarding the protest and ultimate riot of May 30th on October 5th. Does everybody have a copy of the report, I hope, and have had a chance to go through it? If not, they're going to be doing that, but I hope you did. Sheriff, are you there? Are you unmuted?
Good afternoon, Councilman and other members of the committee.
Okay. Let's do it this way: if everybody would mute, if you want to jump in because you have a question, just unmute and I'll keep an eye out for you. And because there are some particular things in here that people may forget as we move through it. So, Sheriff, let's concentrate on the report itself. I'm not really interested right now on the review portion of it. If we can have time to get to it, great, but let's concentrate on the report itself. And all members of the committee and any other parties, just give me a signal by unmuting that you have a question or a concern. Sheriff?
All right. Much of this we covered early on after the incident. In more than one meeting. This report was compiled by members of my command staff who had either were directly involved, indirectly, or compiled this information based on reports that we've seen from that came in from the field after the incident. As far as Mr. Gallagher, I guess rather than going through the whole report, are there particular areas that you wish to address?
I do want to go through the whole report, and it's only 3
Okay.
pages.
Okay,
And I want to start, as all good books start at the beginning. So, but let me ask you right off the bat, the first sentence. On Wednesday, May 27th, the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Department was advised of a planned protest scheduled for Saturday, May 30th in the downtown Cleveland area. Who notified you?
as I said in my last, in my other talks, we'd been receiving information throughout the week from different intelligence sources that, you know, this protest was going to happen.
Right. Specifically, who informed you?
That would have been the Fusion Center
and I got a phone call from the Cleveland Division.
and the Cleveland Division of Police.
Okay.
Those are our two primary information sources.
Okay, you can go ahead now. Thank you.
Yeah. You know, we were working with numbers that we're receiving through intelligence that were relatively low numbers, nothing that we hadn't seen in the past in other protests that had occurred throughout the city for whatever reasons those may have been. You know, whether it be the Tamir Rice incident or some of the other notable incidents. So, and having been involved in those protests in the past, we felt that you know, between our discussions with the Division of Police, that the numbers that we were going to field that day for this incident were more than adequate. Again,
Okay, excuse me, but what were the initial numbers that you were told?
Initially, we assigned 8 deputies.
No, the initial of the.
The initial numbers were, I believe, somewhere in the area of 300, thereabouts.
200. Right.
200 plus.
And who told you 200 plus?
Fusion Center.
The Fusion Center.
Okay, because I'm looking at communications from the Fusion Center, and the first one I have, and it's really not clear, but it says 967 are going with 2,000 interested. And this was prior to the 30th.
Let me just find this.
Where'd you get the, who told you the 200 number? It certainly wasn't Fusion Center.
That came on Wednesday, was the 200.
I'm sorry.
Wednesday.
Okay, that would have came on Wednesday with the 200 on
Thursday,
on the 27th.
It would have been that Wednesday.
Yes. From my staff is telling me here that would have been on that Wednesday.
Okay, good. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes. So again, you know, the numbers we were getting initially didn't give us too much cause for alarm at that point in time to have to call the whole department in. Matter of fact, as I had indicated earlier on, the day of the roll call at the 3rd District, which was on the 30th of May, I was over at the 3rd District along with some of my staff, and we weren't getting those numbers as far as a large increase in number other than what we had been receiving throughout the week. I had went there, I met with Lieutenant Kozub, who's sitting to my right here, and you know, had asked him, you know, if he had heard anything. At that point in time on that morning, the information we were receiving was still the same. What kind of
what date was that?
That would have been on Saturday the 30th.
Because I have a note from the Fusion Center. That's where the 967 going with 2,000 interested is posted. Now it doesn't give me a date, which is frustrating as all get out. But that number keeps jumping up, and they keep. Boy, you would expect the intelligence to be a little clearer.
Yes, yeah.
Let me ask you this. When did you find out about the 967?
Can I,
The chief is going to weigh in here, Mr. Gallagher.
yeah, Councilman Gallagher, so we found out long after the fact that, we may have missed a couple emails or they just weren't sent to us. The last communication that we know of was the 200 on Wednesday. I know I personally did not receive an email on Friday, which indicated I spoke with Mike Erb probably, I don't know, it was after this report was completed. And he came to my office and we spoke about it and he showed me those emails and I did not receive the one on Friday. So we have tried to correct that issue with our internal reporting mechanism with the Fusion Center by adding on more command staff with the notification so these things don't happen in the future.
Okay.
And then he showed me another email on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. that they sent out, which then indicated, yeah, I believe so, indicated 1,900 individuals were either going or interested.
4.8 thousand interested.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay. But reading through the report, it seems to me, and maybe you can help me, Sheriff, your group went over to Cleveland Police Department for a briefing on that Saturday or the Friday at the Ready Room?
I attended a briefing on that Saturday, Mr. Gallagher.
Okay.
At the third district.
What time was that?
That was probably around 11 o'clock in the morning.
And you didn't know that at 9:12 that 90?
No, I did not.
1,900 were coming?
No, I did not.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
If I could just ask on the emails, if I could ask a line of questioning on that.
Sure, go ahead.
So to the chief or to the sheriff, you guys both, or one of you indicated that Wednesday was the last time you had any information as to the number of potential people coming, and it was around 200. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
So,
that's correct.
So this number got up to 1,900 or around 2,000. And Chief, did you say that nobody in your guys' group over there had any information, no emails? Nobody's like double cover copied on these emails?
And that's Councilman, that's one issue that, in the after action review that we have since corrected. The way the information is disseminated from the Fusion Center, unfortunately, they send it to certain people within the command staff. Many of the emails that I had received from the Fusion Center, I actually didn't receive some of those till later that morning. When I came down here after the roll call at the 3rd District, and upon my arrival here at the Justice Center, my initial concern wasn't to check my emails to see if any intelligence have changed. Myself, Lieutenant Kozub, we observed large numbers of people coming down the street, and it was one of those moments that, it started looking bad from the rip. The minute they were coming down Lakeside Avenue out here, and so some quick decisions had to be made. If there was a change in the information that was sent by the Fusion Center, I was not aware of that, and at that point, what I was seeing here on the street, it wasn't my main focus at that point. I was more concerned with getting more deputies downtown.
So let me ask you, did somebody receive those emails indicating an increase from 200 to 1,900? Who received those emails? Because somebody got.
As I said, I received some emails, but they weren't looked at till after the fact. They weren't looked at that morning. Some of the emails I received were as late as 11:57. I would think that 11:57 on Saturday morning. And I would think that if at this roll call, if there was an increase in numbers or there was a notable change in the intelligence that we were getting, that information would have been passed on at that roll call by Cleveland Police Command staff.
Right,
Okay,
you're
so
saying.
Cleveland-
And it was not, it was, I'm sorry, that information wasn't passed over to us.
Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, that just seems that's obviously a major breakdown in communication. The question now, I mean, obviously this is in the past. Has that been corrected?
Yes, we've been in discussions with the Fusion Center, mainly the chief and some of the other command staff here, to correct that issue. Rather than this information being sent out through email, you know, we have the county alert system in place, and a couple of other avenues that the county uses to get information out to people in a timely manner. We want to, you know, that red alert system is already in place. We hope to piggyback off of that, but we would like it to be so that other people aren't getting this information outside of law enforcement circles. We hope to develop an internal system where when this information goes out, it's going to law enforcement circles. And of course, for a program like that, we haven't explored the cost as of yet, but it's going to take some money to do that.
Yeah, and as far as the emails go, I understand the red alert, I understand that, but there has to be some type of something in writing, you know, historizing what's going on, and it would seem to me that, Sheriff, even if you know, at the top you got a lot going on, I understand that, but it would seem to me that multiple individuals, if you have a situation developing where you're going from potentially 200 people to 1,900 people in a 3-day period, that to me, that's a red flag right there. And multiple parties, multiple people should be involved in knowing about that. I mean, someone should pick up a phone and say, hey, this is going on. You know, we're concerned about that. And I get this doesn't happen all the time, but that to me is a major malfunction in the process.
And I agree with you, Councilman, and these are discussions that I've had with the command staff here, and that the chief has had with the Fusion Center as well, that, you know, this stuff should, and we talked about this before the meeting, you know, sometimes, you know, we look at our emails, you know, during the course of the day, of which I get hundreds of emails, as I'm sure that you folks do as well. And unfortunately, there isn't enough time or hours in the day to, you know, actually read through every one of them. You know, so there should be some type of backup system in place, whether that be through a call, through this alert system, so that we know this information is coming. It's just not a regular, you know, we get protest alerts from the Fusion Center every day for different groups, and after a while they become redundant. Some of them, you know, are events that maybe not have a heightened sense of urgency as some of the other events. Mm-hmm. But you know, we are working to correct that so that this information gets out in a timely manner, not the day of the event, which some of this information we received the day of the event. As I said, the day I arrived down here, that, you know, looking at my email, I'm sorry to say, in hindsight, you know, probably should have, but it wasn't my first priority that morning. My main priority was getting people down here to protect the security of the Justice Center.
Yeah, can you refresh my memory, that time frame? Were there other events during that time? I know things have happened since. Were there other events happening around the country at that time?
Yeah, well, matter of fact, that morning, kind of what sparked my interest was I was up early that Saturday morning. I was you know, drinking a cup of coffee in my kitchen and you know, flipping back and forth between CNN and MSN and Newsmax and seeing some of the incidents that were unfolding in Cincinnati, Columbus, up in Wisconsin, and seeing the problems that the police were having with controlling these peaceful protesters. And that's when I'm like, your spider sense kicks in. This isn't going to be good. Okay, you hope for the best, but you try to prepare for the worst. So, a lot of my heightened sense of awareness was developed through the news media sources.
With that heightened sense of awareness, I just wish, those emails would have maybe been taken a little more seriously given the national circumstances happening. So the important thing is to learn from this incident and to correct it so we don't have an incident like this again, because just got out of, it seems like it's something that escalated very quickly and got out of control very quickly. When perhaps things could have been a little differently. So.
And again, and I'll let the chief weigh in here in a moment, Councilman. I've learned from this. I'm sorry it happened on my watch. I'm certainly not happy with the events as they unfolded that day. And I think that we all learned from it. And as we go through this report further, we'll get a chance to show what we've learned from it and what we've done to change the way we do business here.
Okay, I appreciate your forthrightness. Thank you.
Yeah, and Councilman, can I just interrupt just for a second? Yeah, we agree with you completely. That's why for the short-term solution, we added on the additional command staff to receive the emails until we can come up with a viable solution that's going to give us a better reporting system from the Fusion Center.
Right. Just as a suggestion, and Chairman, Mr. Chair, I'm not going to usurp this entire meeting. Just as a suggestion, in football they have something when there's a quarterback who roams, they got a guy on defense who roams. Maybe there could be one individual whose job is to look for those emails and focus on those emails as a regular part of his or her job duties.
Sure, and I had brought that up. It's not covered in this after action, but I know, that week after the event, I had discussions with the chief as well as Lieutenant Coase of other members of the command staff that, there's a need during these events that we establish, whoever that, whether it's a lieutenant or a sergeant, but that we name an intelligence liaison. That's going to be their total area of concentration, is receiving this information and disseminating it, getting involved in pre-planned meetings and all of that. So that's one area that we tried to address immediately.
Okay, Scott, thank you. Sheriff, I'm still trying to get my head around. So on the Friday the 29th, you gave Cleveland 8 uniformed deputies. And then on Saturday, you were there at 11 o'clock and no one mentioned to you that the size of the crowd had been predicted to be much, much larger. And then you leave that. Basically, we handed command in the report over to CPD, correct?
Well, we were taking our information. I wouldn't say we handed command of the event to the police department, but they were the lead agency involved. We work in conjunction with them, as you know, on a number of events, whether they be presidential debates or what have you.
Well, just interrupting me. It says in the report, CPD had command of the joint police operation, which
That's correct.
The sheriff's department.
That's correct.
All officers, including the sheriff's department, were advised by CPD command staff to clear the way for the protesters, give the protesters the streets and intersections.
That's correct.
You learned that at 11 o'clock at that briefing?
Yes, we did.
Did they tell you where they were headed?
Well, we knew that the protesters were going to be assembling at the free stamp over at Willard Park. That we did know, but again, as other events, other protests that have happened in the past, and we've seen them covered in the media and on television.
That's not my question. My question
Okay.
is at that 11 o'clock briefing, did you have any indication, now that Cleveland had made the command decision to give the streets and the intersections to the protesters, did you have any inkling or were you told any information that they were heading our way?
No, sir. No, we did not.
When did you find out about that?
When I found out about it, I came up to my office here to grab my body armor, and I had Lieutenant Koza with me. And Mr. Gallagher, I know you know which office is Donna Khalil's office here. We happened to be in her office, and we saw the group starting to come down the street. And there was quite a large number of people that were coming down the street. That was the first inkling that we had on the sheriff's side of the house that the crowd had gone mobile and had grown. And it had grown to a number that wasn't indicated to us.
Did you have any information from Cleveland as to any of the protesters having weapons or bottles or I see there's cones and leaf blowers, and it would seem to me that somebody would have seen that long before they got to the Justice Center. Did that happen at all?
No, we didn't have that information. We didn't start seeing any of that until items started getting thrown at us.
Okay.
Leaf blowers, I don't doubt that they had this equipment, but or had leaf blowers with them. I did not personally see that from my vantage point. I wasn't in Donna's office throughout this event. I was actually down on the first floor by this time, and I did not see anything like that.
Okay,
Mr.
continue
Chair?
on. Go ahead.
Mr.
I'm
Chair?
sorry to interrupt.
Mr. Chair, just one point, just to for the benefit of the 8 officers that were assigned at the free stamp. Just one point, as the crowd began to move westbound on Lakeside, they did notify the Justice Center Field Operation Unit that the crowd was on the move in the direction of the Justice Center. And that was about 13:30 hours.
Yeah, that's an important notification. I'm just more and more interested now in seeing what the Cleveland report says, because it just seems to me that information had, well, we're going to have to see what it says and juxtapose these two together. Go ahead, Sheriff. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay, Mr. Gallagher. So I believe that we're up to about, on page 2 at about 14:45. And as I said, the large crowd that began to move from Willard Park arrived at the Justice Center on Lakeside Avenue. They began to grow, and once that large crowd arrived, there was more people arriving into the event. All right. So the crowd started to increase in number and became more and more hostile to the police. The crowd that was there, this is prior to the arrival of the police bicycle patrol unit. They started to bang on the large panes of glass, quite hard where it was shaking the glass, and I'm sure myself as well as many people sitting here thought that the glass was going to eventually cave in. Upon the arrival of the bike unit, the officers worked their way through the crowd and kind of stood as a barrier between the crowd and the window glass on Lakeside Avenue. Again, this is when we saw an increase in the officers being pelted with water bottles, what have you, whatever the protesters brought with them. Well, I would like, and just to note this, while I would like to, I understand it's everybody's right to protest and peacefully protest, but the individuals that we were dealing with were hell-bent, for lack of a better term, if you will, on getting confrontational with the police and doing damage. So that's what, as you know, what we were up against. During this time, deputies were being called on duty, and were, deployed out on the front line to assist the CPD officers that were there to, move the protesters back, get them back out to the street, get them away from the building. We were at the primary entrance into this building, so there were other areas where there wasn't enough individuals there to even provide coverage. As you know, we got damage on both the east and west sides of the building, and we were able to deploy people as people were coming in to cover the security of these areas. I'm gonna go to page 3 here. At approximately 15:45, our SWAT officers, SWAT grenadiers, were given direction by our command staff and by the sheriff's office SWAT commander with regards to deploying munitions in response to the hostile actions of the rioters. So we gave staff the order to deploy products that would, move people back. Several rioters, again, they picked up the objects. They began throwing them back at police, using traffic cones to snuff out the devices, and just continued to wreak the havoc that, they again, peaceful protest, but people don't bring leaf blowers to protests and things like that. They were set on sending a message to police, and I think a lot of this was further, they were further inflamed by what they were seeing on TV and seeing police stations being burned throughout the country, and thought that they could get away with that here in Cleveland. So yes, there was a need for us to, these weren't haphazardly deployed or randomly deployed. The people on my command staff are all capable, knowledgeable officers. Some of them have vast military experience, and so it isn't something where we were just having fun and firing at these people. There was a problem here, and again,
Sheriff, on that 9/12 email that they sent, and I know that you didn't get it till whatever time, but again, there was an attachment, general protest guidelines. Cleveland had that, or had to have had that. And I'm just finding it almost impossible to believe that Cleveland just stood down like this. This is a clear indication, to me at least, that these are people looking forward to defending themselves against the police.
Right.
It just seems to me that that at 9:12 in the morning, we should have been ready for this. And I'm not criticizing anybody just yet, but if we turn command over to Cleveland, it's kind of like they sent us into the lion's den. And as they came back around after 11:30 or whatever time they got there, 12, was it 12:45?
I believe so here. Well, 14:45, 2:45 in the afternoon.
So at 2:45, did did Cleveland indicate anything to you or your staff that they were coming in to save the day?
There was nothing indicated to me. I don't know if any of the staff, I'm sure that if the staff sitting here had known something like that, they would have indicated it to myself or the chief. But at that point in time, we had no information.
And the only thing that Cleveland sent were 8 bicycle units, right?
Correct.
Something's-
And I don't know how.
I'm just telling you, something is not right here. Something is very wrong. And I don't know exactly where to go with this, but continue on.
Yeah, and I don't know where the breakdown in that was. I don't know what the count of officers was on the scene initially. I'm thinking that after even they saw the large number of individuals that were assembling out there, that they started calling in people that happened to be off that day. So anyway, I'll continue on page 3 here. So as the riders began to assemble around the Justice Center, again, items started getting thrown. There's rocks, pieces of cement. I personally witnessed people pulling things out of knapsacks that they were carrying on their back. I know in particular at Courthouse Square, there were people smashing windows in with hammers, the peaceful protesters again. We had the Justice Center parking garage to cover, which they had already attempted to breach that. There was SWAT officers and deputies down there trying to keep them from entering the building through the judge's parking area. We had areas where they attempted to gain entry on the first floor, damage to second floor suites, as well as the first floor clerk of courts, and the Lakeside Avenue of the Justice Center, which was the primary focus of everybody. The rioters continued their assault, where they damaged 2 guard booths, lighting one of them on fire. This was when police vehicles, none of our vehicles, they were Cleveland police vehicles, were set ablaze, along with a van containing shields and batons, which the rioters, the peaceful protesters, used to counteract what we were trying to do and protect themselves. Deputies, we received reports of multiple homemade incendiary devices, which were brought by the protesters. I did not personally see this, but from what I was told by our staff was that there were Molotov cocktails involved. We did what we had to do to I'm now on page 4 of the document. This went on till almost 8 o'clock at night. All the activity that I just covered that was done by the protesters, when they finally started to disperse from the Justice Center and the surrounding property of the building.
And these people, as far as you know, met no resistance from law enforcement as they marched from the Justice Center to downtown proper?
No. Matter of fact, the day of this event, which I said in the past, when I did come over to the Justice Center from the 3rd District, the area where they were supposed to gather there at 9th and Lakeside at the Free Stamp, that was a ghost town. You could have rolled a bowling ball down Lakeside at that point in time. So it was like they were dropped there by a cloud, and the crowd began to steadily increase in number.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Mr. Miller.
Yes, I have two questions, and the first question is based on your observation. Would you characterize this as a situation in which almost all of the protesters were bent on doing damage and confronting the police, or was it more of a situation in which the preponderance of the people there were peaceful, but there were a significant percentage that were not, and that given the size of the crowd, that percentage was enough to cause a lot of trouble?
No, once they arrived at the Justice Center, Mr. Miller, and this was before any deployment of any munitions or crowd dispersal devices. The crowd was immediately confrontational with the police and immediately violent. You know, I know that there's one set of one piece of footage that was the focus on one of the local media channels, where we see a woman a blonde lady at the door with a baseball bat, beating on the glass on Lakeside Avenue. And so this activity, this started right from the rip, right from the start. There were confrontations.
You're saying right from the start, essentially the whole crowd was hostile?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, yes.
The second question I have is that in a prior presentation, it was presented that there was one particular incident that was being investigated around whether the use of force was proper in that incident, and I'm wondering what the result of that investigation was and what you decided.
I believe you may be talking about the incident that we sent over to the Bureau of Criminal Investigation to investigate. That matter is still being worked on by BCI, and I know that they've run into some union issues, which they're continuing to work through, but that's still an open investigation.
And can you tell me briefly what the publicly known facts are of that situation that you can disclose?
Well, there was we had an officer on the west side of the building, which would be West 3rd Street, and there were people trying to gain entry in the Justice Center through some of those first floor windows. The deputy had a beanbag round. There was a beanbag round fired, and it struck an individual who had some damage to his eye, I believe. That's kind of where it's at right now. I can't really disclose anything further. Again, I don't have all the details of the BCI investigation.
Okay, thank you very much. That's helpful.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so I guess I gave you a short synopsis of how everything progressed. Again, at the end of the day, there was, we had called in a number of our deputy sheriffs and other staff members. Many of them were treated for injuries that were received from the rioters. as well as the exposure to the gas from the less lethal munitions that were deployed. Some of them were able to be treated by our medical staff right here at the Justice Center. Again, there were multiple agencies that surrounded to assist us. As you can see from the report, we had Solon, Newburgh Heights, Highland Hills, Lake County Sheriff's Office, Geauga County Sheriff's Office, the Portage County Sheriff's Office, who provided us with mutual aid throughout the day. Again, Public Works did an outstanding job of securing to all the attempted exterior breaches and the damage that had occurred to the building, and removing the debris left by the rioters, which continued well into Sunday, and I was down here as well that Sunday, and many of the court judges were outside scrubbing the building down, that came to assist and help out in the cleanup. Again, I'm at the review portion of the report where, through numerous meetings with my command staff, we met.
Well,
Everybody has.
Sheriff, if I could interrupt before you go there.
Certainly.
So when they were, how long were they at the Justice Center? An hour and a half, hour, 45 minutes?
Councilman who?
Beginning Ted, how long was that?
I didn't hear you, Councilman.
How long were the rioters at the Justice Center?
Oh, yes, they were there, they started leaving the area probably close to 8 o'clock in the evening. There were, most of the large crowd had dispersed by then. Probably, I don't know where they went. Maybe there was damage all around downtown, Cleveland. So maybe they got tired of being here and, they went to other areas of downtown, but, I don't know how many of them may have went there. They may have went home. So there was just,
Roughly 5 hours.
Roughly 5 hours, this went on.
In that 5-hour period, did you call Cleveland for more backup?
We were right there with
We
them.
were right there. We were right there with them. So if there was more backup that was called in, I wouldn't be privy to that. I'm assuming that this was their command staff that initiated those phone calls.
Okay. Are there any questions for the sheriff regarding this report?
Mr.
If I may, Chair?
I'm sorry. Go on.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I understand, your report, and I guess my biggest concern, of course, the Justice Center is important, and it sounds like from the last time we talked, you are of the opinion that they did not get into the Justice Center. Is that true?
That's correct, Ms. Baker.
Okay, they did not penetrate the Justice Center.
That's correct.
So knowing that this crowd or these rioters were enraged at the time that passed at the Justice Center and then moved to downtown only to continue that destruction, we had 5 hours to give warning and provide safety and hope and avoid the destruction that was going on downtown. Why didn't we take action when we saw that crowd was leaving the Justice Center, and pretty good guess that they weren't going home? Why is it that we didn't do more, having 5 hours of riot, try to protect anywhere else this crowd may have been shifted to? Do you have an answer for that?
No, I don't, but given the damage that was done to the Justice Center, we still have a number of areas that were open, through be it through glass that was busted out or just damage done to the building. That we still had concerns that people were going to attempt to enter the building. We assisted Cleveland where we could. We deployed our bus down to Public Square, as well as other officers that we deployed to Public Square. But as you know, the damage, what was going on was, unfortunately, it had gotten out of control. It was too vast and widespread for us to be able to place people everywhere. So given the manpower that we had on duty that day, which I indicated as being approximately 80 deputies, you know, that we did the best we could with what we had on that day. If I could have done more, I certainly would have deployed more people to those areas. But again, we still had a lot of open spots that weren't repaired yet, and you know, we're trying to protect the building as well as the county jail.
And Sheriff, certainly I understand you had your hands full. There's no question about that. I guess I'm saying that after 5 hours of rioting, and then they slowly disperse and move on, there wasn't any other resources that you had or could call in understanding that this riot is not over. This riot is
okay.
There wasn't, I'm not saying that you should have, or your limited amount of guys, but there wasn't anyone else that you could have said, hey, we have victims and storefronts, and they're very vulnerable right now to being destroyed. Who else can I call in that can assist in saving our city?
Ms. Baker, I'm going to let our SWAT commander, Lieutenant O'Connor, he is maybe a little better versed in this area to comment on that and answer your question. So, Tim, why don't you step over here?
Good afternoon. So throughout the 5 hours that we were dealing with this excitement down here at the Justice Center, there were countless calls for mutual aid. The sheriff had already outlined a number of agencies that had provided support directly to our department alone. But that doesn't include the number of SWAT teams that I had contacted for mutual aid, who we then diverted to support Cleveland SWAT throughout the downtown area based on our manpower here at the Justice Center being overwhelmed and still needing to maintain control here. So we had SEB and Webb and Edge SWAT constituting more than 100 personnel, SWAT specific, in addition to field forces from those units that were all diverted to support Cleveland once we had control of the Justice Center prior to their arrival here to support us. Those individuals were accompanying Cleveland as the individuals from the riot had moved into the downtown area. So I felt comfortable at that time, ma'am, that those SWAT teams and those mobile field forces would be able to support Cleveland in that downtown area, and we could focus our attention here on the security of the Justice Center.
But if I may, and you certainly know your business better than I do, but it just seems that if we're talking about a couple thousand people that are enraged and are burning and have destructive, you just 100 SWAT members and some mobile field, that doesn't sound like that's near enough to manage what they were doing that day. I mean, did you think that 2,000 people that were out of control could be managed by 100 SWAT people and some mobile field? I mean, how many people were deployed there? What does it take to manage 2,000 people that are only wanting to destroy and loot stores? Is that the appropriate number, 100 SWAT people?
So 100 SWAT people, Councilwoman, as well as, and I don't have the specific numbers, but I'm believing about double that, so roughly 200 mobile field force members to supplement what Cleveland Division of Police already had on hand. And I understand, and please don't take it that I disagree with the numbers being disproportionate. My experience, I would love to have many more individuals on our side helping to support and control such a large crowd. However, unfortunately, the challenges that we have with staffing and whatnot interfere with the numbers that we need. And like the sheriff had spoke about, we knew that Columbus and Cincinnati had the night prior dealt with massive issues themselves. The state patrol had come and supported us to a point during us as being the county of Cuyahoga, you know, proper and all inclusive. But they also had been supporting not only Columbus, but also Cincinnati. And whenever we have large issues like this, anywhere within an area, a lot of agencies will send what they can or what they feel comfortable in sending to support, but also we're going to hold back some of those from their staff in case that flexes to their area and they need personnel in their area to protect their location and their population. So please don't take it that I disagree. We could have easily used many more officers. Unfortunately, there's a limited supply, and that's where our tactics, our training, and our equipment, and in this case, sometimes it's that pepper spray and it's that tear gas that helps bolster our numbers' ability to control larger numbers of groups.
All right, I understand and I hear you. I guess I just don't see the results of the 100 SWAT and the mobile field forces. I don't see where they were even close to trying to bring that crowd under control. It was, I mean, those business owners, they were victims, and that was coming, and we knew it was coming, and there was, I guess, nothing more we could do. That's not a very good, doesn't give reassurance to those business owners if this should happen again, of what it is that we're going to do to make sure they're protected when we know hours before they're vulnerable, and we know it, and we can't help them because we can't match the number of people of the rioters that came. That just doesn't make sense to me, but I hear what you're saying. I understand your limited amount of people and you did what you could. If I were a business owner there, I would be very reluctant to open a business, understanding that there are times when they can't be helped. I'll let it go at that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Was there any was there any thought given to calling in the National Guard? I know that's a call made by the mayor. Did anybody suggest that throughout all of this?
I did not suggest that. There's no discussion here about it.
No, anybody. You know of anybody that wanted that?
No, I don't. Not personally, Mr. Gallagher.
Councilman, I heard grumblings about it, and I don't remember offhand where the grumblings were. Maybe on one of the many phone calls I spoke with other SWAT commanders throughout the region. So at some point during this operation, I was under the understanding that they had made that request, but that may be a false assumption on my part.
And again, just to piggyback off Lieutenant O'Connor, you know, there were grumblings, and I did hear grumblings that the National Guard was going to be called in, not from anyone specific who I could name at this meeting today. Just, I guess.
You can. It has to be the mayor of the city.
That's correct. That's correct.
And I'm wondering if anybody contacted the mayor to do that. I happen to know for a fact that he was contacted and he didn't call that out as of, I believe, 6 o'clock. So pretty much the damage was done where we were at, and they were on their way to destroying downtown Cleveland. So again, we'll wait for their report. But nobody from our end.
Councilman?
Yeah.
There's just one point. Executive Budish anticipated the need for it, and he engaged the governor's office late in the afternoon on a request. By at least, I think, what was it, gentlemen, Sheriff's Department, 24 hours, within 24 hours later, we had National Guard deployed. But I know the executive absolutely contacted the governor's office, and he may or may not have been in conversation with the mayor's office at the time, but he definitely was in conversation with the governor's office requesting National Guard support.
Right, and he absolutely did the right thing there. So it really falls on the shoulders of the mayor. So we'll leave it at that and find out what's in their report.
Yeah, if there's one other thing I can add in response to your question about National Guard and to Councilwoman Baker's comments or incredulity about the lack of response. What we don't know, unless the sheriffs can supply it now, is there was no doubt that Cleveland Police Department issued some kind of demand to call up enforcements, just as the sheriff did with his staff. At some point during the day, the sheriff's department issued a all folks report to the Justice Center. And that's one of the things, if you look at the after action report, we noted that we have to do better for staging folks as they come to our scene. When we reached out to Solon and Webb and other law enforcement agencies, they needed to have a better place to deploy and a more organized place to deploy. There's no question Cleveland Police Department did that, Councilwoman Baker. We just don't know how many and when they were able to deploy their forces. And even if they deployed the entire force, I can't answer, and I'm just posing that it's a reasonable question. Had they had everybody there at 14:45 hours, would there have been sufficient to cover the Euclid corridor and Public Square, et cetera? It is a good question, and one that I'd be interested in knowing the answer to from Cleveland Police Department. And I imagine the Sheriff's Department can work with their partner and find out answers to that question at some point when Cleveland Police issues their after action.
That's going to be interesting.
If I may add, Chair, that, we need to answer that question. That's not something where we need to make sure that those people and those businesses and anyone who was walking downtown innocently that day that got hammered by a crowd of people that they weren't expecting to come, we have to know, what does it take with 5 hours of warning, that how many people, how many officers are needed, and do we need to call the National Guard, and what is the protocol? And even though maybe the first attempt didn't work, maybe we should have made 100 attempts to keep calling and calling and calling and making sure that they knew we had a riot on our hands, and that you're going to read about this tomorrow, and what we do today matters. I don't know. I understand the protocol of the mayor and all, but wow, it just seems so heartbreaking to see those businesses and people and looting and money and all it takes for the taxpayers to make up for what happened. And we still have answers that don't seem very reassuring to those that if this were to happen again, that we know what it takes to make sure that they are safe. And
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
To the someone in the sheriff's office or Mr. Curry, how long does it take to deploy the National Guard?
I think, and maybe Lieutenant O'Connor can speak to that. The National Guard, they're citizen soldiers. Okay, so given a Saturday afternoon, you got people that are out doing things with their family, out doing whatever, cutting their grass. These guys get the call. They have to drive in from wherever to wherever that post is located. So again, I think I'll let our military expert here speak to that, Lieutenant O'Connor.
So I'm a Army reservist. I'm not a National Guard soldier, but I can tell you that the process is very similar between the two. And if I or the soldiers in my unit were to be activated, we would have 24 hours to report for duty. And then at that time, we can then be deployed. Now, some would be able to respond faster than that. Others may take a little longer depending upon where they're at. But you can anticipate that generally speaking, if you call the National Guard, you're going to get a small contingent earlier probably in the 8-hour neighborhood, but you're not going to get the full contingent until approximately 24 hours after the request is made.
Okay, so I got a quick question for you. Is the National Guard, can the mayor call upon the National Guard as a precautionary standby, or is this something that has to be done once you guys determine there's a situation that, you know, is out of control? Can it be something like, hey, tomorrow this protest is happening, we want you guys on standby because this has the potential to get out of hand? Or is this something that you have to, they make you go through the protocol of handling it yourself, and then if there's a problem, call us? How does that work?
Roger, Councilman. So to the best of my understanding, the request has to be approved at the governor's level. So that therein lies the answer as to who can green light it. The mayor can request it, but the governor has to approve. And again, to the best of my understanding. But the National Guard can be requested as a preemptive, and one of our supervisors here at the Sheriff's Department is a National Guard member who is currently actually doing National Guard duty as we speak, and was pending a potential call-up for supporting the presidential debate. So when you anticipate issues coming ahead of time, especially large-scale events, they can be requested in advance. Therein lies one of the challenges when it comes to a short-notice protest that turns nasty into a riot. We wouldn't have had that lead time in this situation.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand the on the ground situation at the time and what is feasible and what's not feasible. So I appreciate that. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions on the report itself?
Just one, if I may, just for clarification, Sheriff, you are saying, you said earlier, I believe to Councilman Miller, that you did not instigate the riot, that it wasn't your initial response to them that made them angry and made them into a mob that not only tried to get into the Justice Center, but also march down the streets of downtown. Your position is, and I know we don't have the police report, but your position is you did not instigate that crowd.
No, we did not. We didn't start deploying any kind of devices or anything like that. I don't know who made the first deployment of a device, but we did not do anything to instigate that crowd and further inflame them to what we ended up having that day.
Okay. And Chair, we do have a request, an official request for the Cleveland report. Am I right?
Yes.
We're just at the mercy of Cleveland releasing their report to us and anyone else. I'm not sure what the holdup is. Do they give a reason for the holdup?
No, I know that we sent our report over to them. I don't know where they're at. With their report right now. I'll certainly see what we could do to find that out, see how close we are to maybe obtaining a report. I would hope that Cleveland, we willingly forwarded our report over to the Cleveland Police Chief and their command staff. So I would hope that we would get the same cooperation from the city of Cleveland after they go through their briefings on it.
Their timeline's the same as ours. This happened in May. We're now in November. I'm not sure you have any explanation as to why we could finish ours, but they can't even come close to finishing theirs.
I have no explanation for that, Ms. Baker.
Ms. Baker, I don't need to be an apologist for the city of Cleveland, but when I kept asking the Sheriff's Department, hey, where are we at on our report? I got an education in all the things that it took to do it. And one of the reasons was that they still had to do their job. So in fairness, the the incident occurred on May 30th. We provided you our report on October 5th. One of the reasons why it took that long, in addition to the fact that they had to continue to do their work, is because of the after-action review for the next steps for remediation of any problems that we found. Like, we needed additional training. There was equipment failure in terms of planning, sizing, and equipment. We had communication failures. We underestimated whether you heard in this discussion, whether there was a communication failure that led to a lower estimation of the amounts. There was clearly an underestimation of the threat by Cleveland Police Department and the Sheriff's Department. And then we had issues with regard to mass arrest and transportation. Well, in doing the report, they had to come up and provide the solutions for each of these failures. That's what took so long. I'm hoping that when Cleveland Police Department issues their report, they answer some of the very questions you raised today, which is what were the reasons in terms of manpower or what have you that we couldn't do a better job of protecting businesses downtown.
Do you have any idea how long that's going to take?
No, I have no insight, and the sheriff had some, but he said he'll follow up with Cleveland perhaps to see where they're at. Is that right, Sheriff? Is that what you said?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Corey.
And is there a reasonable amount of time? I mean, are we talking a year from now, maybe 2 years? I mean, what would you expect to say time has passed? It's April of 2021. We still don't have this report. Where would you draw the line to say this isn't right? We should have this report by now.
Well, I would have liked to have seen the Sheriff's Department sooner. So I'd say now, now is reasonable. It's November. It's reasonable now.
Okay. All right. So hopefully by the end of the year would be more than reasonable in getting this report.
And I have to agree with Mr. Corey on that. I would have thought that we would have seen something by now. Unfortunately, we haven't. So it's kind of holding everybody up on all sides. So we'll definitely follow up on that and see. I don't have a definitive date, but we definitely will follow up on it, see where they're at, and see how soon we can expect that.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you, Chair. I'm finished.
Thank you, Ms. Baker.
Sheriff, unless anyone has any more questions regarding the report, I'm going to hold the review till we meet again. I don't think you could go through it in 10 minutes, and I don't think that that's fair to the committee to listen to an accelerated explanation as to where we're going. So we'll hold that. Hopefully Cleveland will release their report. That would be certainly helpful. And are there any other questions for the sheriff on the report right now? Hearing none. Thank you, Sheriff. I appreciate it and your team. Is there any miscellaneous business? Hearing none, we're adjourned.
Thank you all.